But that's not the point. The point is abortion is getting at similar things that contraception is getting at.
Hard disagree,
right?
but...
Explain that for me.
Sure. So the big debate about abortion is that what a fetus is the exact topic that is up for debate that we don't agree on in this country.
You're wrong. Hello?
What? What do you want?
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. So I heard you had some opinions on Roe V Wade that you wanted to express.
Or I guess Alito's brief or whatever. Have you read the whole thing, or have you enough of it? Or?
Yep.
Okay, what's up?
All of it. Well, I'm curious what your thoughts are. I mean, what is your big problem with substantive due process, Roe v. Wade? What's going on with you?
It seems like getting to like creating the right to have an abortion from the right to privacy thing seems like it just seems like a stretch. I don't know. I don't know how you get there. Or it seems like inventing this type of guarantee doesn't seem like it's going to be done constitutionally. Especially, yeah. Oh, let's leave it at that. Yeah, go.
Is it because the right to abortion is not explicitly constitutionally enumerated? Is that the reason?
No. So it seems that we can infer some rights from certain amendments that aren't constitutionally enumerated, but abortion is not, and I don't see how we can infer abortion from anything that currently exists. The argument we're about to have, I'm literally just going to parrot to you everything that Alito said. So if you want to skip ahead, you can just counter what you think he says. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, first I want to ask you some things, your opinion on whether or not certain rights exist. Okay. Do you think that if the government, let's say state government, passed a law that says if you're over at any point in your life 40 BMI, you must be sterilized by the state? Constitutional?
If you are over 40 and you must be sterilized by the state, is it constitutional? I mean, my gut is telling me that this probably wouldn't be.
But why? I mean, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that you have a right to be free from sterilization.
No, but I imagine that there's probably in the Bill of Rights, one of these amendments, we can probably pretty easily infer that there should be a protection against, like, not unwarranted search and seizure, but one of the other amendments probably gives us pretty easily, like, the right to not be sterilized by the state, I would imagine.
Well, you're precisely right that there is sort of a pseudo on-point case called Skinner. And how we've come to understand that right, at least a lot of people have, is deriving from the 14th Amendment. Mm-hmm. The 14th Amendment does a lot of things. This is a post-Civil War amendment. It gives you the fact that if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen of the United States. If you're born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, you're a citizen of the United States. You have the Equal Protection Clause there, which does a lot of great things for, I know that you love black people. Sure. That does a lot of good things for racial minorities. And there's this clause in there that says that the government will not deprive you of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. What does that mean, Destiny? What the fuck does that mean?
Well, I mean, it's going to be argued, right? You have to provide arguments for it.
Yeah. I mean, so one thing that might mean is the state can't kill you, right? It says life. The state can't kill you without some procedures. The state can kill you, but it's got to give you some procedures first.
Sure.
Another one might be property, right? State can take your property, but you got to have process. There has to be something there. But this last thing, liberty, what the fuck does that mean?
So
keep in mind,
liberty. So Alito's contention in the brief was that liberty, we have the term liberty in common parlance, and we have to be careful to dissociate that or disassociate that from what we might mean in like a legal sense, because the word is, as I'm sure we both agree, is incredibly ambiguous.
That's a Lincoln quote.
What? I think, he quotes it, yeah. So what Alito, I think, goes on to argue is that if we're trying to define what liberty was enshrined in the Constitution, then we look and see during like the ratification of the 14th Amendment, like what existed in law at the time and what's like vital to the, I think like the tradition and history of U.S. stuff. So he's looking at
deeply
like common
rooted
law,
in our history and tradition and
so things like the government not sterilizing you would probably be something pretty rooted in tradition. There would be no common law laws that say that you're going to be sterilized is probably something that you wouldn't be able to find any historical precedent for, like anything like that, right?
So you doing that right now is you're recognizing that there is both a procedural component to this due process clause. That is, government can do a lot to you. They have to give you the right procedures for it. But there's also this in this liberty. There's a additional gloss here. There's an additional substantive right by virtue of you saying that there's something to protect with due process. It is an implicit acknowledgement that there's something there, and that liberty, it doesn't explain itself. One example of what that liberty might be is all the Bill of Rights. Because guess what, Destiny? I don't know if you knew this. The Bill of Rights didn't apply to the states at the founding.
Correct. And I think Alito goes on to mention that most of that stuff ends up getting codified in state constitutions as well or something. But yeah.
So that is a doctrine known as incorporation, where provisions of the Constitution, which were indisputably at the time when they were enacted, meant to apply to the federal government only. That is First Amendment. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech.
Yeah. That some of these went on to be basically spread out to the entirety of the United States, not just the federal government, right? Yeah.
That's right. But it doesn't say that, right? It doesn't say in the Second Amendment, apply the Bill of Rights in this weird, loose way to the states.
Correct, but I think this is where Alito goes on to make the argument what was happening at the time. And I think it was like the majority of states had started to incorporate a lot of these different processes anyway. So it seems like in looking at how the Constitution has been viewed and what the state laws at the time were, that you can make the argument that this was an appropriate thing to do, which I think was his big argument against abortion, because at that time it was still an incredibly divisive topic in the United States. It remains. But we'll get to that.
We'll talk about his historical analysis in a second. Okay. But the thing that we're moving off of is this common conservative trope, which is it's not there, therefore it's not there.
Sure. And I wouldn't make that's a silly argument to make, right? Because the Constitution, of course. Yeah. There are things that we can imply or infer from other amendments.
Simon says.
Right. And guess what? If there were a universal vaccine mandate passed by a state government, who would be making those? There's nothing in the Constitution that says state can't mandate you to have a vaccine. Nothing. But the very first people who would be in favor of this substantive due process would be precisely the people now who are against abortion, the same individuals. And so unless you're Justice Thomas, and you'll notice in Alito's opinion, he mentions Thomas's kind of weirdness on this issue, where Thomas is one individual, and so was Scalia, by the way, who didn't believe in quote unquote substantive due process, what we're doing now. He found the incorporation of the Bill of Rights and other liberties to be properly understood as deriving from the Privileges or Immunities Clause of the 14th Amendment. But whether you're finding these rights as applied from the Privileges or Immunities Clause of the 14th Amendment, or whether you're finding them from the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, you're finding them somewhere. Everyone is playing this game where they're applying to individuals rights that are not constitutionally enumerated, and they're going to apply it to new circumstances. And so I'm glad that we both agree, and it seems that Alito also agrees that substantive due process is the law of the land, and it's here to stay. Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay. Now on to this shoddy opinion. One, it's important to determine when we're talking about what kinds of things are deeply rooted in our history and tradition, and what things should count as fundamental rights, to notice the pattern of things that have been recognized and what is kind of the guiding principles that are making some things be fundamental rights and some things not be fundamental rights. And what Alito does is Alito very unconvincingly makes it narrow, tries to make all the cases narrow. Factually, abortion is different than contraception. Who can deny that? Who can deny that abortion is not factually different than contraception. It is. But that's not the point. The point is abortion is getting at similar things that contraception is getting at.
Hard disagree,
right?
but...
Well, let's see what Alito says. Alito tries to distinguish contraception. Alito tries to distinguish
interracial marriage and
sterilization, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know how he does it? He says a couple things. One is, well, don't you know abortion involves potential life?
Mm-hmm.
Dustin, you're not going to sit here and tell me that contraception, sodomy, private sex laws, adultery laws, sterilization, that doesn't have anything to do, and marriage, those don't have anything to do with potential life.
Absolutely, I will. Yeah, I think it is fundamentally different.
How dare you? I mean, you're saying contraception has nothing to do with potential life?
Absolutely, yes.
It has something to do, or has
it absolutely
nothing to
does not. It is fundamentally different.
Explain that for me.
Sure. So the big debate about abortion is that what a fetus is the exact topic that is up for debate that we don't agree on in this country.
You're wrong. That's what Alito precisely says is not what the court is deciding. The court goes out of its way. Alito says this is not an opinion where we're going to determine when life starts. So if you are going to say...
Wait, hold on. Let me finish. You either misunderstood me or you're wrong. Okay. Because you just said it. I'm almost restating what you said. He said that abortion is different than contraception, interracial marriage, etc., because this is what's up for debate, potential life. But that idea of potential life seems like it was defined in Roe v. Wade and then expanded upon or reformed in Casey v. Planned Parenthood or whatever. That was by the courts is they tried to define that, the different trimesters and when it was viable or whatnot. But I think Alito was saying that it's not the job of the courts to decide that. They didn't want.
Alito, the Roe majority didn't say that we're going to define what life is. They explicitly said that we're not doing that.
In Roe, didn't we get a division of trimesters by which abortion was okay, or did that come in?
They were not defining when life started.
I hard disagree with you here. What do you mean? That's exactly what is the case of abortion. It's the merits of what's, unless I'm missing or I'm misunderstanding something. When you're saying from the court that you can have an abortion at this trimester or not this trimester, how are you not essentially saying this is what we define as life or not life?
They explicitly say that is a question left to morals, that is a question left to religion, to your own culture, and they're recognizing an interest in potential life for the state. But at no point, and in fact, if you ask these conservative justices, there has never been a holding on point that life begins at any particular point from this court.
Okay, I mean, I feel like that's essentially what we're saying
if life began at a given point, other rights would attach to you. If life started at your the third trimester, mm-hmm. that baby not only, you can't deprive a human being of life. That individual baby, that unborn child itself has a right to live. But the court is explicitly not saying or holding that child is alive at any given time. At no point.
Isn't it the case that you can literally get charged for double homicide in states if you kill a mom that's pregnant with a fetus?
That doesn't have to do with whether the Constitution or whether the Supreme Court has decided by virtue of Roe v. Wade that life begins at a particular place. The fact that you could have some intensifier to a crime doesn't mean that as a matter of constitutional law, life begins at a given place. And the Supreme Court has explicitly said that that's not what we're doing.
I don't understand how can the Supreme Court decide? So if you're not going to say they decide when a life is a life, I guess if I could rephrase it, so they decide when the fetus is viable, that's when it should be not aborted. How do you get there from the Supreme Court? How on earth can they possibly say that?
The Supreme Court has decided that the point of viability is when the state's interest in preserving a potential life has crystallized such that you can ban abortion, has become something that's the state's interest part of the analysis, because the Roe v. Wade is not accepting an unqualified right to have an abortion. Roe v. Wade is saying there are interests for the state. One interest is the life of the mother. State is allowed to ban certain abortion procedures if it's a risk to the mother. And at a certain point, the state's interest in preserving the life of the unborn child becomes such that you can't, that you're allowed to ban abortion. And that is viability, understood in Casey. Those cases, right, What we're talking about here is distinguishing the abortion line of cases and the abortion as substantive right versus contraception versus sterilization. And if you're saying that what distinguishes it is, well, the court is recognizing that this has to do with life, then the court is lying when it tells you that it's not deciding that issue.
Wait, say that last part again.
If the court is, if you said that, you know, abortion is different than contraception because abortion, you're killing a life or you're deciding when a life begins. If that indeed is the court's rationale, then the court is lying, because the court says we're not in that game. We're not deciding when life begins. We're not. I
think you have to play weird philosophy games to say that like contraception is talking about potential life in the same way that like an abortion is talking about any potential life.
Tell me how it's different.
Well, in one you have because in one you actually have a thing that is growing into a life, and in the other you haven't created the thing yet.
Tell me how it's different in a way without defining when the thing begins.
Well, the existence of the I mean, I can't define anything in the history of anything. Like ontologically, if we're talking about can I define a thing without identifying when the thing begins? That's kind of the point, right?
The court is telling you that they're not involving themselves in the decision of when life begins.
Sure, but they're telling you they're involved in yeah, okay, go ahead.
Their rationale cannot depend upon a thing starting. If they're saying that we're not in the game of deciding when the thing starts, then you can't distinguish those cases by saying, well, that's when the thing starts, if they're disclaiming that that's what they're doing. Does that make sense, what I just said?
Yeah, hold on. I have to fucking ignore fucking retards in chat. Jesus Christ. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so...
No, hold on. Let me rephrase what you're saying, okay? So you're saying that the interest of the court is not in deciding when life has begun, but they're merely deciding when the fetus has become viable enough for the state to have an interest. Yes?
Forget about that for a second. The state's interest thing is different. We're defining now the scope of the right and why they're different. You could have a bunch of different individual rights, and for whatever reason, the state could have an interest in getting rid of one or applying one in different circumstances. For right now, just focus on distinguishing contraception, sterilization from abortion. The court, fact number one, court says we are not in the game of determining when life begins.
Okay.
So anything that we do to distinguish contraception and abortion cannot depend on something beginning, because we're not defining when that thing begins.
Wait, I thought that the defining isn't when a thing begins. The defining is when like human life begins. No?
What I'm telling you is from the court's perspective, if they're disclaiming those arguments, if we're saying we are not getting involved in when human life begins or when any of that stuff begins, then
hold on. That's what any of that stuff is. That's what we're talking about, right? Like they can say that we're not getting involved in when a human life begins, but they can still be talking about when like a fetus begins or a potential life begins, right? Which is still going to be fundamentally different than contraception or interracial.
Okay, so then now tell me the difference in potential life between contraception, how that interest is manifested in contraception laws versus in abortion laws, without making reference to the starting point of human life.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Sperm is potential life.
Yeah.
You would agree?
No, it's not.
No.
So a fetus exists, right? And that thing will eventually grow into a person, I guess, right? Is what we seem to agree on. We agree on that.
And a sperm that does
not grow into a person.
A sperm in the fallopian tube does not, approaching a unfertilized egg will not grow into a human being.
No. The thing will eventually combine with something else, but like at this point, insofar as metaphysics go, we're becoming unbelievably reductive at this point. Like I could literally grab a carbon atom and go, oh, this is part of my future baby. Like that, I don't think we think like that categorically. Like, do you think there is no fundamental difference between like?
There's factual differences.
Well, hold on. Like if I like jerk off, am I ending like a million lives the same way if I were to have an abortion at like the third trimester of? No, I would say no. I think there's a fundamental difference, of course.
And the difference is, well, one is just closer to the stage of quote unquote potential life than the other.
No, the difference is what the actual thing is that you're aborting is categorically different.
Why though?
Because
it's unique DNA. Is that why?
It probably stage of growth and probably the fact that it has a unique genome. Sure.
Okay. So, is destroying a fertilized egg, that's abortion? I
believe we define that as such, yeah.
Really? You think that, you know, a lot of people make fertilized eggs, they freeze them. You would consider destroying a fertilized egg abortion?
I think most people do, yeah. I don't think you freeze fertilized eggs. I've never heard that before. Maybe they do, but if you did and you destroy them, I think most people consider this like some form of abortion, yeah.
Oh, okay. So...
Well, wait, hold on, wait. Do you not?
No.
Okay.
I don't think most people would consider, you know, there's a process for creating fertilized eggs. You would agree with that? For in vitro fertilization and for other procedures of those types.
Hold on, I might be crazy. Okay, one of us is in vitro, meaning in person. In vivo is in a petri. In vitro, in a petri dish, you combine an egg and a sperm, but you don't freeze them after fertilization. I thought you implanted them after fertilization, don't you?
You can, but whatever. Like, there's a stage at which you can make a fertilized egg outside of the human body.
Sure, you could,
right?
yeah. But I imagine that anybody that's probably anti-abortion would probably agree that, like, or would probably say that, like, yeah, that's like a form of abortion. Actually, I'm almost positive they would. This is why they oppose things like stem cell research, right?
I'm not so sure about that.
They absolutely do. As somebody, I heard about it, fucking stem cell research all the fucking time in the opposition to this.
So you think that abortion, anytime there's your definition of abortion is as follows. Anytime you destroy
a fertilized egg or whatever comes after that, yeah.
A fertilized egg or anything after it.
I think that's what most people consider to be an abortion, yeah.
Okay. And that's because of the uniqueness of the DNA.
Or the creation of a zygote. That you're creating something fundamentally new that didn't exist before.
Okay. And the court, you think, is allowed to weigh in on that stuff? Or that's what they're saying, that they're weighing in on.
It sounds like they're trying to avoid that, saying it's alive or whatever, but it sounds like what they're trying to do is talk about viability of a fetus and when the state can be interested in that, yeah?
I'm trying to define the right itself.
Yeah, but I don't even know what the right is. What is the right? What are we even at right now for what is the right?
I'm trying to you agree that contraception is and should be a fundamental right, yes?
I think abortion should be a fundamental right. Or when you say fundamental, I'm sorry, do you mean like legally found in the Constitution?
In the Constitution.
Oh, I think that like contraception, probably from like a right to privacy or something. I don't know the Constitution. I have to look it up, but it seems
that's
like
a big leap, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. Even Alito doesn't seem to think so. So probably not. If he thinks it's not a big leap, then it's probably not a big leap.
Well, I mean, you should have to explain it to satisfy yourself, right? I mean, isn't it a big leap? You said that, you know, abortion is a big leap.
What do you, okay, hold on. I don't know if you're being good faith or bad faith right now. I'm 99% sure that the rights to contraception and everything, the fact that Alito is penning the majority opinion coming out against abortion, but says that things like contraception very clearly fall on their end. Do you want me to bring in like another law student or a lawyer to argue against you? Or I'm pretty sure that sounds like something that can be easily inferred from other amendments. Is that not? Are you arguing that it's not the case, or are you just testing me to see if I've like memorized like where this right is implied from?
Your rationale. I'm testing your rationale. Why is it that it's such a big leap to get abortion from privacy, but it's not a big leap for contraception?
Because in contraception, I don't think we're ever arguing about the state having an interest in another party or like the viability of the fetus, or there hasn't been like, that's like, it's such a less contentious issue.
The state's interest is, I mean, that's secondary. That's secondary. First, you determine what the right is itself. I mean, there will be times when the state is going to have the ability to sort of infringe on that right or to go forth and put barriers on that right. But first we determine what the right is, don't we?
Okay, I don't know. What amendment do we get? Would it be our 14th Amendment for our due process or whatever, that you can't I don't know. That'd be I don't know. If you want me, give me like 20 minutes and I go look it up. But I'm 99% sure if you really want me to spend the time on it, I can, or I can bring another law student. But I'm almost positive that like you could probably infer the right to like using contraception for a private sexual relationship between two people. Same thing with like interracial marriage or like these types of things are way easier to justify than I guess like the arbitrary like circus of Pisco that's saying that like having an abortion is the same as like using a condom or jerking off. Like,
well, justify it. You know, justify it, really. I mean,
okay, if you want to give me 20 minutes to read, I can.
I'll give you 20 minutes. I have to respond to something real quick, so I'll be right back.
Okay.
Where do we leave off?
Okay, you asked me where memes came from, I think.
Yeah, so just to
Okay, so I'm going to cite a bunch of stuff that you probably already know about, I imagine, right? So the case that I'm obviously looking at is the Griswold v. Connecticut case, yeah? Mm-hmm. So it seems like in Griswold v. Connecticut...
burn the bridge.
Hold on. It seems like in Griswold v. Connecticut, the court ruled that there is a... it was through...
Penumbras of the Ninth Amendment.
Well, I think it was mainly the 14th, right? That you can't be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And then they go into like the substantive due process that even though there's not a specifically enumerated thing, we still have this other right. And then the idea that you can't go into like a marital couple's room basically and look for like contraception, that would be disgusting. Yeah. So it was based on that concept of trying to figure out if a marital couple is using protection or not, that the state has no interest there. They don't have the right to invade.
Well, so the early cases don't really formalize our doctrine as much anymore. So there's a lot of not great clarity on the early cases, like Griswold, for instance. And after Griswold,
because I don't think in those cases the substantive due process wasn't actually formalized yet, because there were still other decisions pending. Yeah.
And also in the Lochner era, which you'll notice the Alito opinion cites Lochner a lot. Mm-hmm. It's not like this formalistic thing that we see today where strict scrutiny applies in Lochner, and even in like the vaccine cases where we're talking about the kind of language that we use for fundamental rights has changed over time. And so all I'm trying to get at is there's a line of cases which everyone seems to acknowledge is protected by some implicit notion of privacy, of liberty, of intimate decisions having to do with one's family, with raising children.
Okay, yeah, but you have the only way that you're making this argument is this. I don't know if if this is intentional autism or unintentional. Is this ignoring the fact that abortion uniquely is talking about like the ending of a potential life? That's what makes it unique from these cases. Well, but you're just trying to say like technically oxygen can be potential life. That's like your response to that. But I don't think anybody else in the entire United States, say for like hardcore like psychology people, or I'm sorry, philosophy people, are gonna see eye to eye with you on that argument.
So the first question I would ask is, even if I granted, which I'm not going to grant because I'm about to give an argument about why I think that contraception has to do with potential life, in that stopping, even if I admitted that potential life is only at when there is a zygote or a fetus, I mean, you still have all your work left ahead of you. The first step is like, why does that matter?
Why does it matter? Because all like it seems to be the case that like all of constitutional law is basically based on like the rights of individuals versus like legitimate interest from the state, and then like balancing the tension of those two forces, right? So for your privacy to be overridden, there has to be some legitimate interest of the state that trumps that right to privacy. So in the case of like contraception, I should be able to fuck who I want, how I want, like that should have no bearing on you. But in the case of abortion, right, at some point, this is going to grow into something that the state has an interest in, right? The state has an interest in a baby that is going to be born, in 12 hours, and probably one that's going to be born in 1 week. Well, how far back does it go? That's a really rough thing to legislate from the bench. That's all I'm saying. I think it's fundamentally different that the state has an interest here, whereas like in contraception, the state can fuck off.
I don't know that's fair. Why doesn't the state have an interest in preventing sex with contraceptions? We want to increase
the onus is on you to give the argument for why it does. Right, we have a government of enumerated powers. The onus is on you to say, why should the state have an interest in that? Otherwise,
I think the government does have an interest. Why wouldn't the government have?
Because usually you're allowed to fuck behind closed doors. It's private. That's your.
I'm not denying that there's a state interest at the moment in which there's at conception. I'm not denying a state interest. The question is, we're always weighing state interest versus whatever liberty interests might be at stake. And in the case where there's a liberty interest that doesn't matter, say for instance, your right to do drugs, right? We think that you could think of that as a privacy interest, but we're not going to weigh it very heavily against the state's interest in potentially preventing widespread uses of drugs, preventing people from becoming addicted to drugs. So there's kind of two things going on here. One is, what is the nature of the right at issue? Is it something that we care about? Is the substance something that we care about? And two, then we can get into the question about the state's interest. But first, I think our job is to distinguish things that seem very similar At least, or at the very least, the distinction you're giving, they might be factual distinctions, but why are they constitutional distinctions? You know, are you telling me that a state has a really less of an interest 5 seconds before conception as opposed to at conception?
Yeah, of course. Yes. Just like if I have a gun, if I'm holding a pistol in my hand and I'm holding a foregrip in my hand, it's not illegal until the very second I attach these two things because I've created something different. Yeah, of course. Or much the same that like the state might not have an interest in me like digging my knife into somebody's throat, 5 seconds before, but the moment it happens, or the state doesn't have an interest when I'm sitting behind the wheel of a car right before I take a drink, but it does after. Yeah, of course, things change. That argument of like, you're telling me 5 seconds can change something dramatically? Well, of course it can. Absolutely.
But it seems anomalous to suggest that, this proto-life, potential life, only exists at the moment in which conception occurs because of.
Well, I don't think that is. I think that is a tough call, but that's the whole point of this. It's not for the courts to say.
But the court, if you're saying that that's the distinction the court is drawing in distinguishing between those rights, then that is implicitly the court getting into the game, isn't it? Do you understand what I'm saying now? So
no, I think that's incredibly Weasley. I super disagree, but go ahead.
Just follow with me.
I'm following you, but
statement number 1, court says we're not going to get into the game of when potential life occurs or when life occurs. That's their statement, right? We're not going to get into that game. We're not going to decide when is the critical moment at which this thing becomes, either a human life or anything like that.
Sure.
And so if your distinction between the potential life of contraception, whatever that is, the not yet potential life of involved in the contraception decision, is something to do with the decision of when life starts or when something's a fetus, then you're doing what the court's not willing to do. You're getting into the game of deciding.
Well, I mean, like if the Supreme Court is going to rule, the Supreme Court's already in the game. Right, they have to be.
But they're saying they're not.
But they're not making the determination of like when they're not. I think that the court basically it's establishing a field where it's saying this is the field. How you feel now up to this. When does it become a life? When does it not? It's up to the states because the courts aren't making abortion illegal, right?
The courts not
making abortion illegal. They're kicking it back to the states to allow the states to figure out what they want to do. Which seems to be the appropriate that if there was ever a case of the courts not taking a position, because if they were taking a position that potential life is this thing and it's worth defending, then it seems like the courts would issue some ruling saying that like abortion is like federally illegal, that we'd be going in the other direction. But it's not.
They're not making a determination at the end point where they're making the rule of decision for people to follow with respect to abortion. But they're involving themselves in what they say they won't involve themselves by distinguishing the other things that they say that they're willing to uphold.
No, okay, hold on. I have to sort through the verbal diagram.
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
Hold on, because I totally disagree. So the court is saying that abortion is fundamentally different than things like contraception or interracial marriage. But they're not going to make a decision on like when a potential life is a life. And you're coming out with this, well, since you're saying that it's fundamentally different, you've already actually weighed in on it. But that's not true. If they had weighed in on it, then I think we would be seeing a push for, and by the way, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the court will come out with this ruling because this is only for whatever draft order. But if the courts came out and said, we're banning abortion, now they've made a decision, but they're not. Right now, the courts seem like they have made a decision prior to whatever ruling is coming out that it's absolutely.
You're not following Destiny. So
okay,
suppose the court
wait. I think we should go. I don't actually trust you on this one. I think you're actually being super weaselly.
No. Let me give you an example.
You can try it again. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Suppose the court said something like this: we are not deciding when life begins. We leave that to the states to decide their own abortion rules.
Sure.
And then when faced with the confrontation of how do you distinguish, because you have to agree, they have to answer the question, how do you distinguish contraception, right? They have to answer that.
For autism,
correct?
Yes. But ordinarily, every other human being would agree that at conception, you've created something different. No other sane human is going to say like, oh yeah, a sperm and like a 6-month-old fetus, it's like the same thing. That's in Pisco's world.
No.
Yeah.
You can make the argument to combat the autism.
There is no way that I can. You're getting into weird forms of like ontologies of like, well, anything can be anything if any part belongs to any other whole thing. Yeah.
Stay with me for a second. In the process of coming to the determination that there's a difference between, and saying what's obvious, right? What's clearly autism. The difference between sterilization and the difference between contraception is abortion is a right to kill human life. If they said that explicitly...
Well, but hold on. Wait, the courts are not making that statement, though, right?
I know they're not making that statement, Destiny.
Okay.
What I'm asking you is, the end result is the court says,
Didn't say Simon says.
But in the process of distinguishing this other line of substantive due process cases, they say, well, what's different about abortion and why we don't have to follow the precedent in these other substantive due process rights is abortion involves killing a human being. Even though at the end of the line, the rule is the states decide, would you say the court is weighing in on when life begins?
No.
No? If
the court was ruling in on when life begins, my understanding is that you probably can't murder anybody, and I don't think the Supreme Court would come out with a protection for murdering. So I don't think the court has weighed in on I think what the court has said is that states have an interest here. So we're going to protect the interested party of the state to create legislation or to have legislation that gives them the right to dictate these types of medical procedures.
I'll get confused on the state's interest part. We're talking about the fundamental right at issue here. And the question is, we have to, the courts, you might think it's autism, but the courts actually care about comparing and contrasting substantive due process rights and giving people some settled expectations that their rights aren't going to be trampled on.
Wait, hold on. That's not the autism part. The autism part is you trying to say that like blocking contraception like is metaphysically the same thing as like having an abortion. That anything could be a potential life, whether it's.
I'm saying that you should have a reason grounded in constitutional law or some kind of policy. Maybe you have that, but you have to distinguish those things. It might be clear to distinguish them. It might be obvious.
But I've already given you the distinction. If I do agree with the Griswold decision, you're the one that has to give me where do we get abortion rights from?
You're denying that the court could be weighing in on the question of when life begins. So long as their end result is abortion is left to the states, then it precludes the possibility of the Supreme Court weighing in on when life begins. Is that your statement?
Say that again.
Okay. In the process of distinguishing one line of due process cases, substantive due process cases, from abortion, something that the court is interested in doing. You see Alito multiple times in this opinion saying abortion is not like this other stuff. Mm-hmm. He says it. If you read any part of the opinion, you see him trying to say,
like
don't worry about Griswold. Don't worry about this stuff. This is different. And in the process of saying this is different, he's going to give a reason, right? He's not just going to say it's different just because. There's a reason why it's different, isn't there? And
because the state doesn't have an interest in two people fucking, right?
It's not at the level of state interest yet. I submit to you. It's at the level of why is there even a right? You know, first we discover is there even a right here? Then we can talk about weighing interest about whether
the right does the right not come from the 14th Amendment? Is that not where the right comes from?
So, yeah, the right comes from the 14th Amendment.
So we get the right to fuck around in the 14th Amendment. We can do that. The government doesn't have a reason to intrude on that, no. But then when there's a fetus created, now it seems like we're arguing on whether or not we have an interest of the state.
Step one is right, and step two is interest. Okay? Because the level of interest that you might need to show from the state's perspective might be different based on whether or not there's a right. So I'll give you an example. If a state passes a law that says something like all shaving cream cannot contain mercury, is that law affecting an individual right?
To some extent, sure.
Well, not like a fundamental right? Is there a fundamental right to have mercury-laden products?
I don't know if there's if some corporation is creating products with mercury, depriving them of their right to manufacture. I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure.
I'm trying to give you an example where, if it's just some regulation with respect to health, which is not.
Well, because
really
don't regulations and stuff, don't they have to derive their power ultimately from some part of the Constitution? Don't those all flow down from that? You can't just create arbitrary restrictions.
We assume that states have general police power, and that by exercising the general police power, as long as it's okay under their own state constitution, which for the purpose of this hypothetical, I'm assuming that everything they're doing is not an unconstitutional delegation of state legislative authority. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that for the purpose of these hypotheticals, everything is sort of above board on the powers.
Okay, sure.
front.
Yeah, we can assume on the hypotheticals, sure, that they want to ban like, sure.
So we were presented with a regulation that doesn't really involve any of the particular rights that we care about. It's just an ordinance that says whenever you file your taxes, it needs to be on white paper with black ink. And that you don't have to show a big interest there for the state. The state doesn't have to have a really good reason for saying that it has to be black ink versus blue ink, because it's not an individual right that you have the right to submit your forms in black versus blue ink.
Sure.
And so, but let's say the state said something like this: if you're black, you have to submit extra materials for your license.
Sure.
Now the state needs to show it, that law.
Now we violate equal protections of the 14th Amendment, right? Yeah, sure.
And so the interest that the state needs to show is going to be way higher. So before you get into questioning the interest of the state, we need to determine what it is we're weighing the state interest against. Think of another one as national security, the famous case being Korematsu. In that case, which is overruled in dicta recently in the Trump Hawaii case, we had an explicit national origin restriction on movement, arbitrary detention for Japanese people. And the rationale, and that is as strict scrutiny, that's a term, as high threshold, as fundamental rights as you can get, is essentially detention camps, concentration camps for Japanese people in the United States of America. Mm-hmm. And the interest has to be super high. And guess what? The court says national security. We're in the middle of a war. That's what's going on here. And so we have reason to believe that even naturalized Japanese people are going to be a threat, or more likely to have a threat to our very vital national interest. In those cases, the interest that the state needs to show is going to be much, much, much higher. And so that's why I'm trying to separate the inquiry. Yeah, you can say the state has different interests, between when it's conceived as opposed to when it's just sperm. That's fine. But first, we're conceiving of the right itself, and then we get into the rationale for the state to interfere. And so what I'm trying to get at is, you say that, well, all this stuff it's not a big leap to get from 14th Amendment, which just says, the state governments will not deprive you of due process of law with respect to liberty. It's simple to get from there to adultery, from there to sodomy, from there to contraception. That's an obvious okay thing to do.
So you're saying, can you just say this for me? Alito is lying then in what he published. He's lying. Can you say that?
No, he's misleading people 100%.
Okay, so he is lying. Okay.
Well, you don't have to conceive it. I'm not going to accuse him of
You are accusing because he's explicitly saying that those are fundamentally different than what's at odds with abortion. But you're saying he's lying when he says that.
No, his logic.
So he's an idiot then. He's irrational. Can you say that then?
What he wants to say is abortion is different because it's killing a human being.
That wasn't the argument that he gave. Did he give that argument?
No, he did not give that argument.
Then why are you inferring that argument from nothing when he gave plenty of other justifications you can actually argue with?
Because I'll give you the stated justifications. The stated justifications are abortion deals with potential life, and abortion involves a critical moral question.
Okay, I only read 20 pages. Neither of those were interesting to me. I don't think either of those are strong arguments. It sounded like the stronger arguments that he was giving were historically, what was common law related to abortion at the time? Has this ever been challenged far in the past? What did the laws look like around the world, or even prior to the formation of the Constitution of the United States? And then when abortion was quote unquote codified via Supreme Court decision, what happened to the United States afterwards? It's still far from a settled issue. There's some 24 states that are ready to flip a switch to immediately make forms of abortion illegal should the Supreme Court switch its decision. Yeah. I think that these are and also the idea that in prior rulings, the Supreme Court has taken it upon itself to essentially looks like legislation to start saying first trimester is this, second trimester is this, third trimester. I think these were way more compelling arguments from Alito than the focus on the moral shit or whatever. That's like a side argument. I don't think that's the main point he's making.
The reason why I'm glossing over the historical analysis is because you can make the same historical analysis of sodomy, and you can make that same historical analysis of any of these other rights, contraception among them, and sterilization. You can make these same arguments, and they were in fact made. If you look at, Scalia is in dissent in Lawrence, and he's an originalist. He says there was no understood historical practice of allowing this kind of sodomy to exist. There was no understood practice of contraception in the historical.
You don't think that we can infer? You don't think we can infer a little bit more, though, that there is a right to your privacy there without due process, like that somebody shouldn't be able to come into your house and watch you having sex, like that was essentially what was.
But the people, if you're going to rely on the historical argument, I don't know why you don't accept Scalia and why you don't accept Thomas. And
because I think that that fundamental right there, I think, or I shouldn't say fundamental right, but that inferred right seems like it comes a lot more directly from the 9th and 14th Amendment rather than this really roundabout way of getting to abortion.
We're ignoring the historical aspect of it because we're agreeing that let's be honest here. There's no fundamental right to gay marriage that's deeply rooted in history and tradition. There's no deeply rooted history and tradition of an affirmative right to have gay sex in your house. That's not, if you're doing the kind of historical analysis that Alito's doing. Well, hold on.
To be clear, that the kind of historical analysis is necessary because of the complexity of the issue, right? Like, there might not be a right to have a certain RuneScape account or something, but like this is far more easily derived than like the right to an abortion, which is obviously far more contentious, right? The only reason why we would have to do a complicated historical analysis or have it analyzed by the
question is why. You're saying it's much more easier, and the question is why.
Okay.
And if it's the question is like historical analysis and like what was accepted at the time, I think you have a problem then, because then you have Lawrence, which is the sodomy case, and you have all these other cases where the historical record is not like, oh my God, in the 1800s we were all progressive and we were all allowing for contraception and we were all this like free love society. That's not the historical record. And same thing with abortion, right? Actually, in abortion, I would almost argue that there's better evidence historically that Alito's ignoring. Alito, doesn't mention the fact that prior to the mid 1800s, quickening, or he mentions it very, disparagingly, but think about how significant this is. For the early part of the founding of the country, pre-quickening abortions were legal.
Yeah, maybe, but I can't even tell if those people knew they were having abortions. I'm not even sure if they did, because a lot of this back then was marketed as like women's menstruations being blocked and the importance of keeping them like on a regular blah blah. I don't even know if they knew they were having abortion. I'm not sure. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't.
I'm just making a comparative kind of view to gay sex being an affirmative right.
Well, sure. I'm just saying that it's important to be correct on that, right? Because it seemed like Alito made the argument that he made an argument that referencing some other common law that like if you were to give a woman like a poison for killing a baby and instead it were to kill the woman instead or something, that you could still get a murder conviction because of like the transference of mens rea or whatever.
Going on there, right?
What?
That historical example is not apposite. That means it's not on point. He's talking about laws that criminalize giving non-consensual abortions to people who didn't want an abortion. He's talking about...
but there's not the punishment wasn't you gave an unlawful abortion. The punishment would be murder.
The punishment...
The point that he was making is, let's say, I think he said this exactly in the brief. If I try to shoot somebody and kill them...
It was a transferred intent. Yeah, it's a transferred intent argument.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of them, right? But a lot of the historical examples he cites are clearly not relevant. I mean, no one thinks...
Which one was not relevant?
All the ones having to do with other people inducing abortions in others... No one thinks that the right of abortion in the United States means the right to unilaterally abort anyone else's.
That's not even that. It was arguing the transferred intent to see what was the feeling of abortions at the time. He's not trying to say that people are saying we should be able to induce abortions, or that anybody's even saying that. It was more just trying to figure out what was the feeling at the time when these amendments existed or were codified or whatever, or ratified. Like, what was the feeling at the time of the United States for abortions, like historically?
Well, the feeling I'm happy to say is one that I happily agree with, which is we should criminalize people who maliciously induce abortions and the termination of pregnancies of other people. Yeah, there's one case where he shows that there's this transferred intent theory, but that only happens if the woman dies. But if the woman survives, there's no that law did not prescribe the abortion as such. And so
hold on, wait. What did you think the transferred intent argument was? Because I think we're having a disagreement on this.
Basically, if you're giving to a woman an abortion with the intent to have the fetus die, and the woman in fact dies, right? Typically, there's no malice there with respect to the woman, because you didn't want them to die. It's not a murder in wait. You know, let's say you weren't even reckless, but we're going to transfer the intent to kill the fetus and
But
make
the intent,
that
there was no intent to kill the fetus. That's not a thing. It was intent to murder, right? That's the thing.
To murder the woman.
But no. But the you can't go to break something and then that transforms into intent to murder. The whole point was that in the eyes of the law at the time, you were murdering somebody by trying to kill the fetus. That was the whole point of the transfer intent argument.
The transfer intent argument is you're doing the crime is not the murder of the fetus.
Are you sure? I thought that was exact. Then one of us is misunderstanding.
The crime is the murder of the mother. That's the crime.
But in order for it to rise to murder of the mother, you must have had the intention of murdering the fetus.
Of killing the fetus, yes.
No, hold on, wait, hold on. No, this is the entire point he's making. You're not quote unquote killing the fetus. You're attempting to engage in murder. This is the whole point. You can't just say killing the fetus because you're begging the question. But he's making the point that, like, if I were to try to shoot somebody and somebody stood aside and I shot the person behind them, I tried to murder someone, and now that intent is transferred to the other person I tried to murder. When it came to the abortion, if I try to murder the baby and I accidentally murder the mother, it's murder because the intent transfers. It's not like you went to do a surgery and then the mother died and now it's murder. That was the whole point of that analogy that he gave.
It's not murder of the fetus that you're getting charged with. You're getting charged with murder of the mother.
Yeah.
And so, no, I'm not going to lie to you, right? That law is some evidence that people had a consideration for this thing called a fetus.
Sure.
I'm not denying that that's historical evidence. There's historical evidence that goes both ways. There's historical evidence that prior to the 14th Amendment being passed after the Civil War, a lot of states started banning abortion, right? That's prior to the 14th Amendment being passed. And the 14th Amendment is the operative amendment. And then by the early 20th century, practically every state banned abortion, any abortion, criminalized abortion. I'm not going to lie to you that this historical record shows a line of pure acceptance up until Roe v. Wade of abortion. That's not the historical record. And Alito is correct on at least that front. Although there's other evidence that points in favor of the abortion supporters. The point, though, is you need to distinguish the things you like from the things you don't like. You cannot say, on one hand, well, the way we're going to distinguish abortion from gay sex and all this other stuff is because of the historical record, because the historical record is bad in a lot of these substantive due process cases, a lot of them, in ways that are not good for the viability of those rules as, quote, deeply rooted in our history. Unless you take a view of these rights one level of generality removed, and you don't say, well, it's about abortion as abortion. It's about abortion as it relates to notions of intimate decisions and ordering your life privately with respect to your family. It's about bodily autonomy and privacy. If you conceive of the rights in those ways, in a broader, more generalized way, you can ask me, when does that generalization stop? But that's kind of what we're working with the line of cases that we've all kind of agreed on that are good.
But then I feel like if you want to run in that other direction, if you're going to autistically push me to defending carbon atoms as potential life, couldn't I autistically push you in the other direction and go well, if the Supreme Court is going to rule that I have some bodily autonomy, that I have all this,
why not do drugs?
No, I was going to say, why not abort a 2-year-old? Why can't I have an abortion of somebody that's 1 year old or 2 years old or whatever?
Killing children isn't deeply rooted in our history and tradition.
Well,
in the same way
but I'm saying if we're going to use your arguments, why can't I?
Sure. I mean, yeah, the pendulum swings both ways. I mean, I don't deny that.
Well, but if that is the case, which we agree, it's hard. Shouldn't this be a legislated thing then? Should we not look to the fucking Supreme Court?
Should be a legislative thing.
No, I don't think so.
Just bite the bullet.
I don't think the state has an interest in the sexual activity they have with another person.
I'm not talking about the interest yet. We're talking about the right.
I have a right to privacy, right? Or I have a right to life. I have a right to life, liberty, and freedom, right? Life, liberty, and freedom. These are rights that I have afforded to me.
What does it mean? I mean, does that mean I can do drugs whatever I want in my private home?
It means that I can, at the very least, I can fuck people. I think it should mean about drugs, but obviously that's a different. Are you gonna hold on? Wait, do you think I'm gonna defend the DEA or that I?
No, I don't think you're gonna defend the DEA, but you have a view of things that matter to you and that you consider as part of your what it means to have privacy.
Not at all. Wait, hold on. My personal views don't matter. I don't give a fuck about abortion. I'm never going to have an abortion because I'm a man, right?
I'm saying your view as not your view personally, as in what do you do with your life, but like in terms of what you think should be included in whatever we call this privacy right, which you acknowledge exists, and which you acknowledge exists for some practices, such as fucking whoever you want, consensually adult, in your room. But it wouldn't include having sex with a goat in your room, would it?
I would say it would.
It would?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I would say it would. Sure. Wait, hold on. Wait, are you asking me if I would have a right to do this?
Do you have a constitutionally protected privacy right to fuck a puppy in your room?
Sure. Yeah, I think so.
But abortion, that's a big step.
Yes, of course. I think the state is interested in.
Isn't a big step?
No, it's a fuck. You already eat animals. Who cares if you fuck them? We already own animals as fucking slaves.
Okay, I can give you an.
If the courts were to come out also and say some shit like we don't think that like the government has like the right to, you know, figure out what drug, although you probably are getting more. I actually honestly God, I don't know where the DEA comes from, what things argue about, but maybe it is the case that like it comes under like the state's ability to administer public health or whatever. That's where the DEA comes from. I don't know. Maybe it does, and maybe for bestiality, maybe it's the same thing. Maybe for public health, so people don't get diseases from fucking apes or some shit. I don't know, but
listen, I don't want lectures from people that say like abortion is this big leap in terms of our privacy rights from someone who thinks that like, yeah, you might have like a good reason why you think puppy.
Oh, rip, he got.
Constitution says that you have a right to fuck your puppy. That's not a leap, regardless of the policy implications.
No, not even remote. I can't even believe that you think it is. We already fucking torture and eat and murder animals in the United States. You think it's less of a leap for me to say that like, yeah, if you want to fuck them, then fuck them, versus saying that like, oh, abortions, like the state has absolutely no interest in that whatsoever. The Supreme Court is literally going to draw a nice little chart for us, even though half the fucking country is divided legislatively on how we should proceed. Like, that's insane to me. Like, and we're still divided on it.
Let's stay where we are. I mean, we don't want to generalize to the overall conversation about democracy and you know the efficiency and you know whether or not this is fair.
Well, but that's essentially what's at stake. And I think Alito goes on to make good points about that. That the Casey versus Planned Parenthood, it looks like legislation when we're literally talking about like first trimester, second. Sure, I might disagree with some of those too. I don't know. If you put me up, maybe if you want to talk about drugs or whatever, I might. I don't know where the federal government derives its right to like have Schedule I fucking marijuana drug. I don't know. Maybe I would disagree with that too. I'm not sure.
Well, a lot of these constitutional rules, the Constitution, you know, people are gonna tell me I'm soy right now, so you can put it in the chat.
Okay, soy.
There's this famous line from I think it's McCulloch v. Maryland, that we must never forget that it's a constitution we're expounding. It's like the fact that I'm saying it is a cliche, and everyone's gonna be like, you know, you're a meme for even saying that. But the Constitution doesn't explain itself. And in the course of interpreting constitutional doctrine, you have to make rules. You have to make standards. And sometimes the standards seem arbitrary. You know, Miranda looks like legislating, doesn't it?
I don't know. I don't know.
You have to say these magic words, otherwise.
Did hold on? Does wherever Miranda came from, did the Supreme Court literally say these are the exact words you have to say, or did the Supreme Court just give a guideline saying like you have to inform people of their rights?
They did not say that these are the exclusive words, but they did mention that those were those were an example of words that need to be said or like something like them.
Sure. I don't think it's a similar jump. The idea that something comes out saying you have to inform somebody of their rights or whatever, I don't think it's the same jump as
it looks like a legislative rule. You have to say these words. I mean, where in the Constitution does it say you have to say you have the right to remain silent? You know, you have the right to an attorney. Everything you say can be used against you. You have the right.
I can go away and I don't know. I'd have to see which case Miranda rights came from.
Miranda versus Arizona.
What year was this?
In the 60s, the Warren Court. I don't actually know which particular year in the 60s, but it's the Warren Court, and that is 100%. I need to brush up on my con law. Who says that? Stealth bug. Get in here. The fact that you said that Casey looks like a law, so does Miranda. And you can say, well, okay, well, Miranda was wrongly decided too. Well, a lot of these like personal jurisdiction rules, they also look like legislation. Minimum contacts, what the hell does that mean? You there?
Yeah, wait, ask me that again.
A lot of storied constitutional rules, you know, black letter law looks like legislation. because we just need people to interpret and give guidelines for how to order our lives. The Constitution does not explain itself. And so we have rules like another one might be, is this called eldritch balancing? So there's say the government is like gonna deprive you of your child. The government has to give you like a hearing, right? That's the
I feel
process.
like when
Government has.
so I feel okay. So sorry, I'm reading at the same time. I feel like when we talk about like Miranda rights, I feel like this is a little bit different because we're literally talking about procedures that are directly related to one of the Big Ten, okay? One of our Bill of Rights, like our Fifth Amendment. I think that it's a little like, I think that the tracing there to like somebody needs to be made aware of this like fundamental Fifth Amendment right, which might be integral to them having like due process, is going to be a much shorter walk than building out like privacy rights into abortion, saying states can't have an interest. I think that's way farther away.
Don't doubt it whatsoever. Don't doubt it that Miranda is well, actually you can doubt it whether or not Miranda helps, because guess what do you think happens when people get, and you've seen it, when people get read their Miranda rights, the next second, is it actually helping? Is it a prophylactic? Is it actually?
I mean, it probably helps more than it doesn't. Sure, I imagine so.
At this point, I'm not even sure.
You don't think it makes any difference? You don't think the fact that
I'm
people...
not sure.
Okay, well,
I'm not so sure. I'll just say I won't take it as a given, but assuming it is, yeah, maybe it's a good idea. And do I support the notion of Miranda as like a policy? Yeah, I do. But I'm just addressing like it looks like legislation argument. A lot of really fundamental black letter principles of constitutional law look like legislation. That can't be enough.
No, that's not. I don't think that just it looking like legislation, but I think it's like the totality of everything. The fact that it reads like legislation, the fact that it was trying to settle a highly divisive issue in the United States, the fact that decades later it's still not a solved issue, and you've got tons of states that are constantly trying to maneuver around it. That like
that is a potentially good argument for stare decisis, and maybe that's where I want to go now. One of the rules. The most important rules, I would say, of law and an ordered system of liberty is settled expectations and stare decisis. Everything can't be up for grabs every term of the Supreme Court.
Sure.
We can't be arguing Brown v. Board or Marbury versus Madison every year. And here we have Roe v. Wade. I grant everything you said. Grant that Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided because, it's so much more of a leap to get to abortion rights than puppy fucking rights. Grant everything you said on that front. Now, 50 years after that precedent has been decided, it's been applied by lower federal courts, affirmed by Casey. Undue burden has been applied in a number of circumstances, applied in ways that you would expect courts to expound on general rules. And for the easy cases, for absolute bans, there was never even a question of applying undue burden or any of these fundamental rules that either Roe or Casey brought about. It's engendered an incredible amount of reliance interests, which Alito brushes off. Alito says those aren't concrete reliance interests. Why? Bupkis. Because feels, dude. It's a Ben Shapiro argument as far as I'm concerned. He totally discounts the reliance interest. There's been no inconsistent legal precedent with Roe v. Wade. Where do you get off overturning Roe in that context?
My understanding is the justification that he gave was the continued like legislative battleground that existed prior to that, and the necessity to revisit to see how those decisions were originally made. Because he does agree that stare decisis is important, that the precedence of the courts is important. And I think he even explicitly writes that a court that constantly overturns itself is one that undermines itself. But it would not be ahistorical to say that the court has done that, right? For things like Brown v. Board of Education, plus, right? Like the court has gone back and revisited prior decisions it's made and said, what, this isn't correct, right? So so just on the basis of stare decisis, I don't think we can say we can't revisit it, right? We have to go forward further into the argument to say that. No,
but that's correct. That's correct. It's not enough to say
sure. And Alito's argument is that decision was egregiously wrong. That there were like 5 different amendments that they were trying to pull from in order to make this work. And ironically enough, I think he mentions that in the argumentation given here in whoever was against Mississippi, now they're like trying completely and totally new arguments to justify it. I think they went to a new amendment that they were trying to say justifies
Equal protection clause. And guess what? They dispatch with it in one paragraph. Equal protection argument.
Sure, yeah, because the equal protection argument was ridiculous, of course, because it was equal protection is the dumbest justification for abortion ever. Yeah.
Tell me why.
Because in order to invoke equal protections, you have to show that there's an undue burden placed on somebody with did he say invicaria?
Don't confuse your rules.
What rules?
Undue burden is the substantive due process abortion.
Okay,
Casey's.
not undue, but there needs to be justification for, I don't know what the word is, undue burden. If you want to make a rule saying black people have to do a thing, you need a really good reason for that rule. If you're just doing it just to fuck with black people, it doesn't work, right? There is no evidence that people are making abortion rules just to fuck with women. That's not the case. So equal protections doesn't come under like protection here.
You're buying Alito's take on the equal protection clause.
I do, because I think it's absolutely true. The idea that abortion is trying to be outlawed just because people are trying to put a burden on women, for that's obviously not the merits of the case.
Is any amount of disparate effect enough for you to think there's a viable equal protection argument? Any amount of unequal effect? I agree with you.
It could be the case, but it's not here. If you want to explore that in a fun hypothetical, we could, but I don't think it's here. Unless, I need you to answer this question. Do you think that people are trying to make abortion illegal for the purposes of disparately affecting women?
I don't think that there needs to be purposeful discrimination for understanding that it's the main way that equal protection has been understood in the main sort of cases is that it's invidious discrimination with an intent to discriminate. I won't deny that fact.
Okay.
But if there's a sufficiently large and disparate effect on a particular class of individuals, a class that is protected by the equal protection clause, as we know women are, thanks to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, among others, who recognize that. I think that the court should consider it in more than a paragraph. They should think about evidence. They should be hearing. I don't know. Maybe the briefs didn't really expound on it, so maybe you can't fault Alito. I mean, this is just the draft, so whatever. But I do actually groan a little bit that an argument that could be hashed out and briefed further is just dispatched in a paragraph, and that's probably how it's going to be.
I think it's fine. I think it's not serious. I don't agree.
It's a serious argument that's been around for since the in Ginsburg's time and before then. It's an argument that's been around for a while, and Alito has the gall to call it a quote new argument.
Well, Alito what is the? Do we know what sentences? Do we know what the decision's yet? Is it going to be 7-2 or 6-3?
No, it's going to be 5-4.
It's going to be 5-4. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, do we know that 100%? Or are you guessing based on?
We don't likely. I mean, we don't even know if it's going to get struck down but we know it's going to get struck down. And what's more, we knew this was going to get struck down in the SB8 case when this Supreme Court allowed the federal supremacy of law to be undermined by this bounty hunter nonsense in Texas. We knew the reason they were doing that was because they were setting up for this. And that's what's going to happen.
What do you mean when you say setting up for this? Like, do you think that the court has become so politicized that they're like selectively choosing cases in order to attack like certain prior rulings, or?
100%.
Okay.
You want to hear an explanation or no?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So in the Texas case, you have a state legislator and a governor who on purpose is trying to avoid the supremacy of federal law by doing this crafty lawmaking to get around state sovereign immunity and standing requirements in ways that should never have worked and that the federal judiciary should never have allowed, because it's a roadmap to the end of federal supremacy of law, the supremacy of federal law, I should say. Imagine that there were a law that said that you're allowed to, you're not allowed to go to school with a person of other color, and that's enforced by $1 billion statutory fees in private suits. Mm-hmm. And to suggest that we're not allowed to challenge that law in a pre-enforcement basis is so ridiculous that the only reason that any reasonable person, I think, can assume from that is they did not want to be seen supporting Roe v. Wade in any way, even in the context of a pre-enforcement challenge where it's a clear violation of established precedent.
Somebody asked me, I don't know if this guy's a lawyer or not, if they're politically choosing certain cases, why do they barely take on any gun cases then?
Well, they have discretionary review, appellate wise, with the writ of certiorari. So I don't know.
Wait, hold on. You just said a whole bunch of nothing, right? The whole point is that they could use that discretion to choose these cases if they were so politicized now.
But they won't if there's not like a circuit split, or if there's not a reason to take it.
Well, but I thought you just said the reason they're taking these is political because they're just trying to overturn. Well, no,
they're taking this case. It's on emergency. They have to have some sort of posture. You know, when you apply for an emergency writ to the Supreme Court, they're going to like deny it or accept it. And so this is what's known as like the shadow docket. And what was before the court is an emergency application to stay enforcement of a law that is clearly in violation of Supreme Court precedent. It's not like they're asking for discretionary certiorari review. It's before them, and it's a clear violation of their established precedent, and they say, no, we're not going to take it, and we're not going to enforce our precedent. I mean, that to me is a dereliction of the judicial power of the United States.
I mean, okay. What else you got for us?
I think you should really think about distinguishing the substantive due process that you like and the substantive due process that you don't like.
Okay.
And have a better answer.
Abortions and
forget about abortion.
Coming in your hand is the exact same type of issue. That
forget about abortion for a second. I mean, just like really start to think about like why you think it makes sense that the state shouldn't be allowed to sterilize you if you're over 40 pounds. I mean,
I don't see like a compelling reason why the state would have an interest in my sterilization.
Forget about the compelling reason. Think about the right. First, think about the right. First, think about why you would have a right.
The right would be that I can eat food that I want and be a weight that I want. That's my right.
Okay. Suppose that it was just we get to sterilize you whenever we want, regardless of your eating habits. You know, it's random. Okay. We want to sterilize people.
Why? How do they have the ability to do that? Where does that come from?
It's, assume state police power. It's a state police power.
Hold on. I don't have the legalese to reject you, but I feel like you're just totally inventing bullshit. Are you saying the state has the police power to do literally whatever the fuck they want? I thought we had a government of enumerated powers. That it has to come from somewhere.
The federal government is a government of enumerated powers,
and state governments have unlimited powers to do whatever they want, save for whatever's in the Bill of Rights, or what?
State governments are assumed to have general powers to regulate. They're limited.
So could a state government tell me that I can only have one kid?
No.
Why not? Whereas multiple kids in the
there's an individual right that protects you.
What individual right protects me?
You tell me. What do you think?
I have no fucking idea.
It's a good question.
I would assume it's like the life, liberty shit or whatever. I don't. What?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Why can you say yeah to that? But then when I say earlier, I don't think the state government can sterilize me, and you're like, well, why is that? It's like, well, because it's my life, liberty. You're like, oh, no, it's not. Like, oh, well, what do you mean? Why can't I just use it? Like,
the point is, you're willing to.
Wait, no, what? Not the point. Explain that difference. I don't understand. I'm too dumb. You're telling me that the state government has police powers and they can sterilize. Okay, all right, gotcha.
I agree with you that sterilization, in the ways that I've described, is unconstitutional. I agree with you that the kinds of one-child policies are unconstitutional, and I'm consistent. They're unconstitutional because they get to the heart of your intimate decision about family planning. That's part of our ordered liberty. It's part of our fundamental rights and privacy and family decision making. That's been understood for years. We have cases that say that you can educate your kids the way you want to. You can teach them the languages you want to.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be explicit in the Constitution. And the same with abortion. And you can try to distinguish and say, well, abortion is that's ending a potential life, but you haven't explained why that's a constitutionally relevant consideration. Why is it constitutionally relevant that you're ending a potential life? You might say that it's policy wise. It's
because I don't know. It seems like states have an interest here, and this question is
pre-interest. Forget about the interest.
First of all, this is like recent law. Okay, this isn't like Abraham Lincoln came out and that's when abortion was banned after the Civil War or some shit. Okay, right? So it's not like ancient history. And then secondly, like it seems like we have a splittingly complicated moral question here of when is a human or whatever. These seem to be hotly contested things. So
and gay marriage isn't. So I want you to repeat a gay marriage case.
I would have to go and review the gay marriage case. I'm not sure. Maybe I wouldn't agree with that one. I'm not sure. But in terms of the what?
I'm gonna give you like a heads up. That case is arguably even like harder to rationalize than Roe v. Wade.
It might be. I don't know. I haven't read the merits of the gay marriage case. I don't know. I think when gay marriage was legalized, I think it was around 36. I think only 36 states had some form of like civil union or gay marriage or something. I'm not sure. I'd have to go and check it out.
Why does it matter?
Because if I back all the way up and I talk at a first grade level, conceptually, the idea of the Supreme Court settling ultra hot issues like this is just entirely inappropriate for what the court exists for.
Flag burning. Majority of the country probably disagrees with flag burning. Certainly the majority of the country...
I can draw... That's different because I can literally draw to the fucking First Amendment my right to burn a flag. If the majority of the country disagree with flag burning, they can pass a law against it.
What does the First Amendment say? First Amendment says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. Is burning a flag speech? What's speech?
Well, I think in that case, what is speech? I think that the courts have some deference to interpret like what exactly is speech here. But I don't think that you are legislating from the bench is hardcore when we try to figure out, well, what do we mean when we say free speech versus like the abstraction of the abstraction of the abstraction to say no state can now make any laws relating to abortion.
But clearly the role of the judicial department is not to like, we're going to take a poll of everybody and see what they think. If that were the rule, then the flag burning case goes the other way. If that were the rule, the Westboro Baptist Church case, I think it's Phelps v. Snyder.
Sure, it's to see what the law says. It's interpretation of the law.
KKK case goes the other way. Mm-hmm. So the court, when they're discussing fundamental rights, we all agree that democracies matter with respect to things that are not fundamental rights. But fundamental rights are supposed to protect against democratic impulse. That's what distinguishes a liberal democracy from a democracy. And so you appealing to the democratic urge or impulse, that's question begging.
I'm not saying that that's the only thing I can appeal to, but I'm saying that when you have like a hyper partisan issue that can't be easily found, like I think that flag burning like pretty easily extends from the First Amendment. Abortion does not. We have to get into some like legal alchemy to get our abortion right, which even you agree with, I think, to some extent, right? That we're doing a lot of work to build out our penumbra of rights and everything and our unenumerated shit or whatever the fuck to get to abortion. It's way more complicated.
Let me be honest with you, Destiny. I
go for it.
I agree that it's not straightforward, but looking at everything we accept from a privacy rights perspective, mm-hmm. Abortion certainly for me doesn't seem like a bigger leap than whatever bestiality right you think is inherent in the Constitution.
Would you feel the same way? It's almost if that feels like question making, because it feels like you're only saying it because you don't think a fetus is a life. But no. if you were somebody that thought that a fetus was a human life, you would give me the 180 on that.
Oh, but I know that you've already had the when life begins conversation, and you don't want to have it again, do you?
First of all, this isn't about I'm pro-choice. I love abortion. This isn't about but the point is that that is what is at stake. That's the contention, right? So it's easy to say like, oh, well, naturally, this right to privacy is the same thing as jerking off. Well, yeah, of course for you, but clearly that's not the case for the majority of the country, right? It's hotly contested.
Should the court, I mean, everything's hotly contested. I mean, Brown v. Board was hotly contested. Brown v. Board, we had to have federal marshals going down.
Yeah, for the people that went to school. But if I look at like Brown v. Board, are the decisions from that case going to stem more naturally from the Constitution than abortion rights?
Wait. But how though? I mean, the Brown v. Board, when the Equal Protection Clause was passed mm-hmm. After Civil War, do you think that was understood to be desegregating schools?
Probably not. Obviously not, right?
No. I'm not trying to peg you into like an originalist perspective here, but once you take the kind of Alito-like approach and just define everything in its most narrow level of abstraction, you can policy your way into whatever.
Sure. I'm not saying that it needs to be like the most narrow fucking originalist, like let's jerk off on like our copies of the Constitution thing ever. I'm just saying that it feels pretty weird that this one came from the Supreme Court. This feels like something that should be legislated. And
doesn't it feel weird that like desegregation came from the Supreme Court? That's a hot button issue. Leave that to the state.
It could be. I'd have to go back and look. I'm not sure. It could be. Or maybe from the amendments that were passed, maybe like naturally stems from it. I don't know. I would have to go back. I haven't read through like the actual cases. I can only parrot like the random shit that I remember from fucking school.
Okay. How's New York?
It was It was awesome. I think New York was probably the favorite city I ever went to. Fuck, I just realized a meme.
What's up?
Wait, why are you asking me about New York?
Well, I just wanted to like cool it off after our conversation.
Oh. Wait,
unless you want to,
have you ever said where you are around at? Like, do you live near New York? Or?
Yeah, I'm in New York City.
Oh, okay, sorry. That's what I was going to say, but I didn't want to blow your spot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, fuck. If I would remembered you were down there, I would have asked you to eat dinner with us.
Yeah, bro.
I think it's actually the best city I've ever been to in the United States. I think it's actually bar none. Yeah.
You should come live here.
Okay, let's slow down, all right? I think rents in Manhattan average like $4,500 a pop, and I didn't go to Brooklyn or Queens at all, so I don't know what those or any of those places look like. Okay.
Not much better.
I thought Manhattan looked really nice. The city was super
awesome.
Yeah.
Unless you're like in the subways and getting pushed into subways by like homeless people. But
maybe I didn't see. I don't know if this because they knew I was.
The only reason I don't have anything against homeless people. There was a particular story.
I don't know if they were just preparing it for me because they knew I was coming, but I did not see anywhere near as many homeless people as I was expecting to. I'm actually so curious now how many times people in the East Coast, or I'm sorry, how many times people in New York travel to other cities, because compared to Seattle, LA, San Francisco, even Miami, New York was like fucking Europe. There were nowhere near as many homeless people as I expected. But I don't know. Now I'm curious if New Yorkers go to those other cities to see homeless people, or if I just got really, really, really lucky. I'm not sure.
I think it depends like where you go as well. Were you just mostly in Midtown?
We walked all over the island of Manhattan. Like we went all the way to the south to the little boats, and we took like a little boat tour to Staten Island with the Statue of Liberty, which by the way is way shorter than I thought.
Yeah.
It was. Dude, when I saw Statue of Liberty in fucking Ghostbusters 2, I thought this shit was like half the size of the Empire State Building. Guys, the Statue of Liberty is like 20 feet tall, okay? It is really disappointing. I'm sorry to say. Holy fuck. But yeah, and then we walked all over the north part of we walked around a lot of Manhattan. It was fun.
Awesome. Yeah.
It actually also feels like a city. It's the only city in the United States that's like there's a million fucking restaurants everywhere. There's like you actually have a functioning subway. You've got functioning buses. The taxis are fucking awesome.
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know what?
He doesn't know about the subway.
Tell me about the subway. Are you about to give me a Londoner answer or? When I was in London, people complain about the tube because they say that it runs late all the time. And running late means that like there's a train or a subway that comes like every 10 minutes and sometimes it's 5 minutes late. Where I come from in the Midwest, the buses came like once every 2 fucking hours. So maybe there are problems in New York City. I'm not saying it's perfect, but like compared to where I am, holy fuck.
That's awesome. I mean, I live here for a reason. Did you, what'd you do? I mean, did you just like walk around, take pictures?
I mean, we did some touristy shit. We got like a little boat tour and we saw the Statue of Liberty shit. And then they went up and down looking at like some fucking cannons on buildings and stuff. We did the 86th floor on the Empire State Building.
Oh, nice.
I walked down to, do you know Louis Rossmann, the iPhone dude?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, we went and visited him and then we went out to eat with him. Yeah.
Well, I don't know him personally, but I know of him. I know that he does like the right to work stuff, which is super cool.
Yeah. So we hung out with him. We went with another friend of hers to go out to eat. And we just walked around.
Is he anti-vax though?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
He's probably like anti like vaccine mandates. But
vax mandate. Yeah, that's probably another really interesting substantive due process question.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's an individual right to be free from a vaccine mandate? Since you think it's so obvious to
Here is like my blowout fundamental, and you know what? Because I don't want to argue over every single thing. I'm guessing you think we should probably abolish the filibuster too, right?
Yeah, 100%. We should talk about that next.
No, I don't want to talk about it. We can talk about it. But I think that right now, I think that we are unbelievably polarized in the United States. And I think that it feels like people are turning to destroying like functions of the government because we are dysfunctional as a people. The people are sick and the government is like the mouth that we vomit out of. So like, I think I like the concept of the filibuster, except maybe you should actually have to go up and talk. And if you fall and die, then you die. But like, you should have 60 votes to push through big legislation.
Why not 80 votes?
Because, 60 is a good number. 3/5 is just rolls off the tongue better than 4/5, right?
Why not 55?
So I think 60, maybe it can be 50. I think you should need more than a simple majority. I like that idea. I like the concept that you need 60, you need 30 states to be on board. You need 60 senators to be on board with passing major legislation. I like the idea that if you want to get some crazy shit done, you got to work with both houses of Congress. I like the Senate. I like the 2 per state. I like all that shit. I like that as a country, we're supposed to work together when we want to make big changes. Or if you don't want to work together, you got to be really fucking popular to do shit.
It's a tyranny of the minority. It's a tyranny of the minority.
That's great. But you know what? Make your ideas better. Get more people voting for your shit. If we're historically divided as a people, then fuck it if the government doesn't work. We're not working, okay? But I understand there's like a whole bunch of different ways you can fight against that. And I don't know. But that informs my Supreme Court feelings too. But yeah.
In that you think the Supreme Court really shouldn't be weighing into hot button issues?
I think the Supreme Court should interpret some things, but yeah, for really hot button issues like this, I think we need to figure it out legislatively. But we're just so unable to do anything legislatively because of how divided we are. But
is that because of an institutional competency reason? Like you think the Supreme Court is not fit to be doing the kind of line?
I don't think it should be their job. I think that we need to legislate. We need to be passing laws. As a people, we need to be able to vote on people. We need to be able to make laws that even if they're coming from the other party, we can agree with. Like, I think the Biden shit, I don't know if it'll set a precedent. Probably not, because we're fucked. But like that, it wasn't Build Back Better. It was the infrastructure plan. He got like 16 Republican senators on board with that. That's awesome.
Kudos to him. That's awesome.
We need to do shit like that. That should be happening.
You don't have to try to explain to me that Biden's based. I mean,
no, not even just Biden, but just that concept of like getting people to. But here's my issue. Okay, I don't want to argue about this, but I'll ask you this question, right?
Yeah.
Let's say we do this. Boom, filibuster gone. Thank God. Okay. Now finally, rapid fire. Let's get some major legislation out. Okay. Midterms. They're looking rough. Okay. Let's say that we have a big Republican sweep or whatever. They've got like 54 seats in the Senate. Like everything just gets undone immediately now, doesn't it?
They're already in. First of all, a lot of what Democrats, I think, want to do is, I think, harder to undo. Like giving benefits to people, giving that kind of assistance.
I mean, careful, you can say that, but we're on the cusp of losing abortion now.
Well, I'm not talking about the social stuff. That stuff, I think, easy come, easy go sometimes. I mean, that is, and I would be worried about the winds of fate here, especially since I think that there is a tyranny of the majority and that both the House and the Senate have inherent Republican advantages. Why do I say that? The gerrymandering advantage for Republicans is astounding.
So here is an issue that I have. Unless you want to get rid of all gerrymandering and figure out how to allocate votes otherwise, which I think is interesting.
That's hard to.
Yeah, because the issue with gerrymandering is that liberals all live together. And that in all of the conservative, like there is no fair way to gerrymander. I feel like you just have to like either just apportion it based on population, which I think would actually work better. I would support. I think I would actually support that. But I don't like to blame gerrymandering because like if you were to try to draw fair districts, and by fair I mean like the population percentage like represents your representatives, your districts would look hella fucking weird. They would be like all in. You'd have like branching over every city. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's why I think our system, our constitutional system is great for a lot of things, but a lot of things it's not so good at. Having 2 senators per state made so much sense in the early part of the Republic when you were trying to avoid insurrections, when you were trying to avoid civil war, and when you wanted buy-in from the Western states and you didn't want them to break off. It made absolute eminent sense to have them have like a buy-in to this nation that we're creating and we're building. But now it's 2022. I would say that national identity, I think you would agree with me on this, that national identity is like, in fact, more pervasive and more. Just look at our creators.
This is something that like I get scared of because we're young. You're young. You're very young. And even I'm still kind of young. Is I don't want to fall into this recency bias for how I think things. Like, do we have a very strong national identity? Right now we do. Yeah. We did have a civil war in the past that was pretty bad, and we do have people making these weird arguments going forward. What do they call it? There's a specific name for people that want to break off some states.
Secessionists?
No, there's even a more specific name for like a group of people recently want to do it. But like when you're getting, especially post coronavirus, you're getting this this exodus of people from California into other states, and like I'm hearing more state rhetoric. I hear it all the time. Oh, national divorce. I hear it all the time in Florida, where people ask me like, oh yeah, like California shit is fucked up, isn't it? Now you come to Florida, you better not come here to change our shit. It almost sounds like immigration, right? If you're going, and I hear that a lot from people talking about Californians, especially in Texas, especially in Florida. If you guys didn't like California and you want to leave, fine, but you better not come here and bring your California shit and fuck our states up, right? So like I don't know, like maybe it is the case that in 10 years, maybe we're seriously looking at some form of like segregating our states. I would hope not. I would think it's impossible. If you would ask me to bet on it, you'd have to give me huge odds, because I don't think it's like that likely. But fuck, maybe. I didn't think that Trump getting elected was likely, and now we're maybe. Now I don't know what odds I would give. If you were to, or what, like, if you were to ask me, like, what are the chances of Trump being elected again? I'm almost 50-50 on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt you. Anyone who says that Trump has no chance, you just will never learn. I mean, I feel like this way kind of with the Russia stuff too. People don't learn the lessons of history until it's like, even when it's beaten over their heads. And so with respect to Trump, yeah, he's absolutely still a danger. He's absolutely the viable, eminent force in Republican politics, no doubt there. And I think he's a source of a lot of our consternation, not the sole source, but certainly I think.
I feel like maybe you agree, or we're just missing. I think he's a symptom. I don't think he's the source. I think that somebody like him is inevitable, and like
I think he's unique.
I don't think Trump made people Trumples. I think that he showed up and they gravitated towards. I don't give him credit for doing what he did to the Republican Party. I think they were just waiting for somebody like that to come along.
I mean, run the experiment back. You know, put Mitt Romney winning 2012. What happens to the Republican Party? Do they become Trumples?
No, but I think the Overton window is farther right than anybody knows. So there's always that chance that somebody could show up and discover it. I think that was the issue.
Fair enough.
It's hard to do counterfactuals, of course, but
yeah, I think it's really hard.
And also, I can agree with you. I'll meet you 1/4 of the way. It's probably somewhat reciprocated. Like, you had people that were prone to Trump, and then Trump comes in and he pushes them even farther. That's probably the case too. Sure.
I think that Trump is honestly one of the worst people who could have ever become president. I don't know that, like,
I disagree, but I know what you mean.
Individual, who would you like?
I don't know if that person exists, but somebody like
Liberty Scott in as president than Donald Trump.
Almost like who?
Fabian, you know, the ANCAP.
Oh yeah,
the Fabian Liberty guy.
I know what you mean. I think we're only assuming like somebody like Trump that was actually smart. I think could have legitimately destroyed this country. I think Trump was a dumb fuck. But I think if he would have been smarter, I think it could have legitimately actually destroyed some of our institutions.
So between your governor and the 45th president, who are you more fearing? Who would you rather see in office?
I honestly don't. I don't know enough about DeSantis to really know. Yeah, but maybe. I mean, he seems more politically effective, but I don't know. But for all the things that we can say about Trump, he was a horrendous leader and politically so unbelievably ineffective. Yeah, but
listen,
Putin would be worse. Yeah.
Okay, Putin would be worse. I agree with that. Why the hell should Nebraska or any of these smaller population states get as big a say as they do to vote for the next president of the United States?
I mean, I love you, but we've already done all these arguments before, right? It's every argument here is going to be the same argument for the Senate, basically, right? That there's some form of state buy-in, but you argue that we have more of a national identity now, and that state buy-in is bullshit, and it just gives a disproportionate weight to smaller states. But yeah.
Okay. All right, I talked your ear off. Sorry for
No, you're good. It's always fun to argue. Do you have anything? I should put together like a lawyer panel. I think I got enough of my community, and I can listen to you guys all screaming at each other over stuff like this.
You should get someone. You should get like a conservative lawyer.
Oh fuck!
Or get someone to debate the "Don't Say Gay."
Have you argued with the Rikita law guy, Nick?
No, but I know who he is.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
100%. You should do more destiny moderation.
Well, that it doesn't work, but the whole point of that show is I'm really good at like moderating debates between two people that are disputes between two people that fucking hate each other. But once I made the show like an official thing, the only people that like signed up for were like really friendly people, and then I didn't have to do anything. So my whole skill there was worthless. I'm just like listening to two people talk, which isn't bad, but it wasn't like the purpose of what I set that out to do. But yeah, I might do a panel on the lawyer thing for the abortion stuff. So I think it's interesting. But
all right, invite me.
Okay.
What's up?
What if you move to New York? Like, where do you live? Like, what's like if for like an upper middle class person?
Manhattan.
You really?
Sorry. If you want to live in New York,
yeah, like upper middle class. Like, I could live in Manhattan, but that's so much.
It's sick, bro.
Yeah, it is.
It's sick. You get to wait like the DoorDash option. I know. Do you love DoorDash and like all that stuff?
No, not for the last few months because I make my shit now, but. I think I would go out to eat a lot more. But I don't think I'd DoorDash. I think I'd just walk out and get food. Dude. There's so much food. Dude, there's so much food everywhere. Guys, it's like 400 restaurants every fucking street. It's insane. From sea to shining sea in the little island. Like, Jesus.
Do you know who Dave Portnoy is?
Barstool Sports, right?
Barstool guy.
Yeah.
He has this show where he like does pizza reviews. And like he has been doing them for so long, visiting different places in New York, and like he doesn't
never run out of places.
He never runs out of places to visit. Do you like pizza at all?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, I didn't actually have any New York pizza, which I meant to.
You gotta go to Lucali's. You gotta go to.
We went to Little Italy's though, and we got some pizza down there, and it was really good. But I don't think it counts. It's not really New York pizza, right? But fuck, the Italian restaurants down there were really good.
Yo, next time you're there, I want to take you to Lucali's. One of the best pizza places I ever had in Brooklyn. Really, really, really good.
Gotcha. Okay. What does Brooklyn look like compared to like the city? Like how?
What do you mean? What does it look like?
Is it like all like skyscrapers and shit, or is it like suburbs, or what the fuck? I have no idea.
No. It's still like a city. It feels like I would say a smaller city than like a much smaller city than Manhattan. But it still has. There are people who argue like Queens and Brooklyn have, in some cases, like better food than places in Manhattan, and I would like agree that. I think the best bagel place I ever had is in Queens. The best pizza place I ever had is in Brooklyn. Like there's more parking. It's more residential feeling. They're like houses and stuff. And also rent is like a little bit cheaper, but it's not a lot of it cheaper.
Oh, gotcha.
I don't know, like what are your needs for
fiber internet is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, something, but Molina liked New York a lot as well. It was a lot of fun running around. So when we saw all of the what's the name of that fucking breakfast at Tiffany's? We went to the Tiffany's place and walked around Central Park and shit like that.
Central Park is nice. Do you let me think. You don't care about like hiking and stuff, do you?
Fuck no. Although I've heard like upstate New York is super beautiful if you want to go out and go north. Yeah.
The Long Island is cool too if you want like I don't know, there's wine tours and stuff there. There's shows too, bro. Shows like everyone comes to New York for if you like. You don't strike me as like a play guy, do you?
Absolutely
like,
not.
Yeah, you hate plays. All plays like you never have.
I've gone with my ex-wife dragged me onto some. My current wife will never have that privilege. Fuck that. I'm good.
Do you like any art that isn't?
No.
What's your like? You don't care about spoilers, right?
Paintings? No, I don't.
Okay.
What do you mean by spoilers?
Comedy? You don't really care about that shit.
I just don't like watching plays, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I would if I saw some different ones. I'm not sure.
What about like concerts?
No. I've tried to even go to concerts of bands I like, but it's like worse than their album. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I would like to see like jazz live, or like I like improvising. I like to watch people improvise. Oh, and obviously New York City has an insane music scene too. But
yeah. Have you been to New Orleans?
Yes. A couple times. Yeah. Because my ex-wife lives there. Yeah. New Orleans is actually it's another incredibly unique U.S. city. I've spent a lot of time down like at the French Quarter and shit. Yeah. New Orleans is actually really
everything's fried though.
Yeah, that's why you're in the South, but there's like a ton of restaurants. There's nice restaurants and shit down there as well.
True. I miss the gumbo. I remember the gumbo and like the shrimp po' boys and some lady sold me crawfish out of the back of her car.
Nice.
It's like the most delicious shit I've ever had. You have to go, don't you?
Yeah, I have a flight tomorrow to.
All right.
Yeah, but okay.
Thanks for the chat.
Yeah, hey, I love you, buddy. Stay safe. You want to plug your stuff?
No, I don't need it. Pisco 95 on Twitch, I guess, but like I barely stream.
Do you have like a YouTube or anything yet, or no, or not?
No.
Okay.
No, not really.
How was the Prime panel?
Yeah. We all just kind of agreed. It was kind of like I don't really love. And I'm sure that you feel this way too. My most interesting conversations are when I disagree and when there's some stakes, when there's like a energy there. But when everyone's agreeing and just kind of like going over in a kind of, I don't know, monotone way, like their perspective on stuff, it's just kind of boring for me.
Yeah, I think that might be like a flaw of character. I noticed that like, because I have friends that I like I've met people, especially I've met some really interesting people the last year there'll be some people that I really like, but I never talk to them. Because like, why? Because like sometimes we'll talk and it's like, yeah, we agree on everything, just whatever. And then I've made other friends and we very much disagree on a lot, but I could talk to that person for like 12
Forever.
hours. Yeah, because it's like, we're like, I'm fired up. I think you're a reasonably intelligent person. We're gonna fucking scream at each other with shit. Like that's just so much more entertaining. But I don't know, that might be like a bad thing. Like I don't know, because like
I think it is. I've gotten in a lot of trouble with like people in my life for being that way. You have to temper it down, but I can't help it if I'm on the dinner table with like a bunch of people and they're all like talking about, oh, where'd you go for vacation, or what'd you do this? I'm just like not interested at all in that kind of conversation. What I want is like, this is the best movie ever because this, and there's like a stake, there's like something's out there, or you know, some people are really good raconteurs or really good storytellers, and so I'll be engrossed.
Yeah,
in
if you could find those people,
really I'm sure you met people who are like just super entertaining, but usually I want someone to be like, I think that the Constitution protects my right to have sex with dogs. I mean, that to me is.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, but it's hard to find those people that are somewhat intellectually rigorous, and then two, it's hard to find people that won't get completely ass blasted after a few conversations. So, but
like mad at you, like taking it personally.
Yeah, I feel bad about the agreeing thing though, because like I'm sure you have this. There are a lot of like really cool people that I know, and I kind of wish I would talk to them more, but it's like so boring, right?
Yeah.
Even me and Melina, actually, there's a relationship problem I have sometimes. So, like Melina's like, oh, like why don't you talk to me as much as some other people? I was like, well, fuck, we agree on a ton of shit. Like there's like we're not gonna like I'm not gonna be screaming at you over like some Swedish shit or like a huge social disagreement or something about like we shouldn't be allowed to do drugs. Like, and when I have people in my life that I like, but I agree with them a lot, it's like I don't know like why the fuck would I ever talk to you? You know, it sounds really bad, but it's like it's just a feeling. It's like a really difficult thing, you know? Yeah.
Does that attract you, like toxic personalities?
I mean, well, no, because not every toxic person is interesting to talk to. Sometimes, though, it could be.
Is that why you like Lauren Southern so much?
That's why your mom likes your mom so much. Okay, okay, I'm gonna leave. Okay, I love you, buddy. Okay, have fun, stay safe, be careful. And yeah, I love you. Be careful.
All right, bye bye.